Hey everyone, I'm Jacob. Thank you so much to Morten for bringing me on stage and to Thomas for introducing me to this event. I'm just going to ask you to begin with how many of you read the newspaper today? Cool. Okay, so not everyone reads daily. In the last week, who has read a piece of news about a company? Any kind of company. Great, that's more reassuring for the elections coming up that we're all reading news. How many of you contacted that company that you read about? Cool. So in short, this is what my story is going to be about today. So I'll kick it off by talking about this. For those of you who are not reading news daily, it might not be known to you that Lars Løkke Rasmussen is the Prime Minister of Denmark. And he posted this. I'm just going to translate it roughly into English so we all have an understanding. By the way, if you can't, I'm not so photogenic, but this is actually me. He writes, Jacob Knobel quit math studies at Copenhagen University, but only to start his own company, which placed him on Forbes 30 under 30, blah, 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 blah. He did an interview with one of my ministers, Tommy Ahlers, about entrepreneurship. Great. First of all, kind of weird that he's contributing someone who dropped out of college and wasted a lot of taxpayer money. But it just shows how desperate he is to win the election, I guess. Great. Now I'm going to talk to you about how much business I got out of this, and in general, I'm just going to tell you a bit about who I am. Now, I'm not going to tell you so much about the companies that I built. I'm just going to tell you about the PR that I got around the companies. So forgive me for that, but this is really what I want to focus the talk on, and it's especially to all of you guys. And I think we all have that fascination about being on a regular front page of the newspaper or whatever. I'm going to talk to you a bit about how much you can actually get out of that. And if you can hear that I'm going somewhere with the conversation that's a bit negative, I'll also be a bit positive now, and I'll say, if there is anything to be gotten out from it, I'm also going to tell you what's the best way to do that in my experience. So I'll start with, and I told you I'm not going to tell you too much about my companies, but I'm going to make it short. I started a company called Dentsu in 2013. What we did was advertising, and we did it for big accounts, so we don't really care about acquiring a lot of small clients. We would much more prefer an expensive steak with some decision maker and get his entire account. So really, really big B2B sales. And it was a very good start. I got some very nice awards along the way. The first one, and I'm actually going to spend a bit of time on this with the awards and the PR, not because I have an ego, but because I think this is where the lessons are for you guys today. So the Forbes 30 under 30, I was awarded because an employee nominated me for it, and then they checked and they acknowledged, and we got that award. And it was a really nice appreciation, I think, to get that award. But in terms of business, let me ask you, how many contact requests do you think I got on LinkedIn after getting this award? More than 100? Less than 100? Let's say between 50 and 100? 10 and 50? 0 to 10? Okay, someone thinks it's above 100. Actually, it was, that was the first one. Back then, not so many Danes got that award, so I was bombarded on LinkedIn. Now, next question. What was the quality of those plus 100 connections trying to connect with me? So today I'm married. Back then, I was dating my then to-become wife. And I always tell her, I'm so happy that I was dating you back then, because 50% of everyone that wanted to connect with me was like a girl that I had nothing in common with and just wanted to meet for coffee. And then the 40% was like, someone studying at CBS, last year of CBS, they wanted to be an entrepreneur, they wanted to join my company. And I told all of them, so back then we had a competitor, and I had the phone number of the CEO of the competitor. So I told them all, sorry, but we're really busy, you should call this guy, he's really good. So I could use that for something. And then the last 10%, they were people that might be interested. And then, you accept their invite, you start a dialogue, and then they disengage, they get busy with something else, they forget all about you. Yeah. Now, in that period of time, I think that prize kicked it all off, and you can see I got some more prizes, but that was only because of that prize. And at the same time, we're actually launching products. We're not just doing PR, of course. We are focusing on building some technology back then. And we did some very nice pieces of newspaper. So we did one in Børsen, where we, together with IBM, we did some of the first cases of weather-based display advertising. So if you're Arla, they're producing dairy products. When the sun is shining, you want to advertise for ice cream. When it's snowing, you want to advertise for soup. We did that piece of newspaper in Børsen, together with IBM, together with Arla. One of the, if ever there was a PR that is good for a company, this was the article. And again, we got nothing out of it. I'll come back to if we did something wrong for that article. But it's just for you to know that getting a full page in Børsen about your product to your audience might not shift any sales at all. Ad Exchanger, if you're in display marketing, it's a really good newspaper. We got an article there. And at that point of time, we kind of have enough material to start when we are pitching clients saying, oh, we have a guy that's Forbes 30 under 30, and we were mentioned in Børsen, and we were mentioned in Ad Exchanger. And so maybe on like cold canvas, it helped a little bit. But it's a lot of effort to put into getting to that. Yeah, I'm going to skip over the other prices. I sold the company. At that point in time, I started a new company. So what I did, this is just the PR, but what I did in the old company was something to do with cloud computing and machine learning. My new company just that, but outside marketing. And that kind of led to some very nice articles. So like first day of opening the business, I was actually mentioned on the front page of Politiken, and you scroll into the newspaper, there's a very nice article about me. And finally, I did something smart with that, and we're going to get back to that. But the article in Politiken actually set off on a great start. We booked something like 20 meetings a week, so that came something very good out of that. And then we've since then given other interviews, but I'll also tell you a bit about, at a certain point, it actually stops mattering. So we're going to jump into that now. So if you look at the previous line, I am actually quite humble, and I rarely give this kind of talk. One of the reasons is I feel like it's way too much self-loathing and talking about oneself. And I think the great example of this, actually there's Danish examples, but I didn't want to mention any Dane by name today. But you know, someone who comes up with a good idea, maybe writes a book, and then you see his face in every single magazine, and everyone talks about him, and it's like, it's too much, right? And you know, feel like however you want about Simon Sinek, but I feel like he's just way too overexposed, right? It's like any problem can be solved with a purpose, and I think it's like oversimplifying something. And so we're going to get back to it in just a second, but I think overexposure is like one of the first things you should think about if you get into PR, which is kind of mind-blowing, because if you get into PR, you did it to get more PR, but I'm actually telling you from the other side, it's a really bad idea, because not long time passes by, and then you'll be like Simon Sinek. Besides the money he's making on selling books, I don't think like anyone would be like to be so out there all of the time. Great. So I said I did something right with the Politiken article, and this is what I want to leave you with. So this is actually an article written about me, and the story that like is around this that's one of the two things today that you should take home with you. So you can read it, it's online. The lady that wrote this is Henriette Rall. She used to work at JØF, and it's a big Danish union. She had a very nice title. And so when the article in Politiken came out, first day of business, I was very hungry to do business. So I upgraded to LinkedIn Premium. It means I could see everyone that was looking at my webpage. I used Google tracking and LinkedIn tracking on my webpage. I did everything. There's actually an app called Albatross, if you don't know it. Really, really good. Converts the IPs of your visitors to companies, so you can see which companies. I would see which company was looking at my profile. I would go on LinkedIn to see who of them I was connected with. I wrote them, hey, I see someone from your company checking out my LinkedIn page. Do you know anything about that? And this is also what I did to Henriette. So she had a very nice title from JØF, and I thought, great, it's gonna be my first client. So to make the story a bit longer, it came out June 1st, summer holiday is about to start. I had just exited my old company. I decided to go on a summer vacation with my wife, and I had to tell her, sorry, honey, the article is coming out in Politiken, we're staying home. And the only reason I stayed home was so I could be on LinkedIn and check who was checking me out so I could shoot back at them. And Henriette was one of them. So I reached out to her, I took a cup of coffee with her, and she actually wrote a story about how it felt to be on the receiving end of, let's call it, massive, intense stalking. And it turns out it feels pretty good if you're a nice guy writing her. If you're very aggressive, maybe not so much. And so the reason that I put the classical funnel that you've seen so many times before is because actually what I figured out is that PR boils down to just another kind of awareness. And as you know in other parts of your business, the trick is to convert that awareness into an actual conversion. And that requires all of the things that you guys are used to doing elsewhere. So like advanced LinkedIn tracking, following up, treating these very cold leads into something warmer. It's super labor intensive. And that actually goes back to saying, well, is PR better than actually buying ads? Well, like this is B2B sales that we're doing, and I'm not so sure that like they are much different. It's really, really labor intensive. And if you do the PR based on some founder or something like that, it's also very, very personally dependent. So have you guys heard about the Trump bump? So just after he became president, you know, he would go crazy on Twitter and he would write something about Boeing and the Boeing share would plummet. So people who are trading on the stock exchanges, they would call it the Trump bump. So it means just by a single tweet, he could influence the real world, the shares. So certainly Lars Løkke, he could like bump my views on LinkedIn by factor 10, right? It was nice. But given that I feel like we had already saturated and nurtured those leads coming out of LinkedIn, we didn't actually do all of the advanced following up on what came out of that. And so the reason is, besides PR, and you guys have to think about that, of course, as well, you actually need to work on whatever it is that you're working on. So we didn't do anything active to pursue this spike. And I guess you can also hear where I'm going with this. As a result, this post just went into the hot air, because we didn't do anything. So the point of that is actually, even a post by the Prime Minister of Denmark saying something very cool, where he put you next to Tommy Ahlers, which is one of the most popular ministers, that does not convert in any way to business. And so if you're considering some kind of PR or press release about anything, you just have to think really, really careful about how are you actually going to monetize on this. And so you could say that instead of you guys focusing on social ads that month or whatever, you should focus on trying to convert these clients. Yeah. So takeaways. I think that PR often, this is my experience, it just leads to more PR. And that seems very nice for the moment, but that more PR will only lead to more PR, and then you're just in the media all the time for no particular reason. And in many cases, poor leads. And poor leads can be good because somewhere in there can be a very good lead, but then you have to spend the time to actually nurturing those poor leads. And maybe just to say a bit more about that, so because of this PR, many people is reaching out to us to like have a talk. We should come and give a speech. And the speeches, by the way, is just the same. So we actually started saying no to giving talks as well, because it just removes the focus all too much. And then sometimes there's a client, very nice place, they invite us to give a talk, and we don't want to say no to them, so we throw out a crazy price. But then some places, they're just like, sure, that's not a problem. So maybe the solution to that is just to say no all of the time. I think it's kind of like Buddhists that talk about killing your ego. This is much the same, and it's a trap that you get into and you will never get out. Okay, then the next thing, I think, if anything, if you get PR, make sure that you actually talk about your product. So I was helping a company the other day. They do something with insects, like turning insects into edibles. And they wanted to talk about if we go, all of us, over to insect-based food, then the world climate will be much better, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure that they're visionary, and that's why they're doing it. But you know how many people, like let's take this election, every single party is talking about climate change. So if this founder goes into the newspaper talking about climate change and insects, she's just going to be another one. And she'll kind of waste her possibility of the PR to convert it to business. So she should talk about why insects taste good. They actually taste okay, I tried them. Yeah, and then like you need to have some kind of organization to treat this publicity. Publicity in itself will not get you anything. And finally, be careful about overexposure, which is a great segue for me to say that I'm done.